Today, though, we have our speakers are two strong leaders on campus here. And so when you come, I hope that you can see them both as supports. This is Boris Ricks. And Boris has been here, what, 11 years now, 12 years?
I wish, no, not 2008.
Okay. Okay, 9 roughly? My math, okay.
About 9.
Not about 9
Fall.
years. Okay, and Boris is in political science. And he runs a program called the M3 program, which is Male Minority Mentor program. And so they have a lot of great activities, and he'll get into that today. And this is Cedric Hackett, and he is a faculty member in the Department of Africana Studies. And he runs a wonderful symposium every year. And you also run the Frederick Douglass Institute? Or
The Boys Hamer Institute for Academic Achievement.
Okay, so both are very strong in helping male students be leaders and succeed on campus. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to them, and let's give them a round of applause to welcome them.
1 second, let me put this up real quick. Why don't you go around the room and introduce yourselves while I'm getting this.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool. Alright, so I'm Adrian, and I am a upcoming senior at Hackett High School. And I'm here because I'd like to be here and to make an impact.
Along with your introductions, tell me a hobby.
I play volleyball.
All right.
I'm Rudy. I'm going to be a senior at Northridge Academy High School, and I like to draw sometimes.
Like to draw. Very good, very good.
Hi, my name is Adrian. I'm also going to become a senior this year. I also like to draw.
Okay.
My name is also Adrian, and I go to Northridge Academy High School as well.
Wait, we have
We're
three
three
Adrians?
So we have Adrian 1, Adrian 2, and Adrian 3.
Every time.
A senior as well.
But you don't like to draw, right?
No.
So we have the Adrian that draws and the Adrian that doesn't draw, right?
Yeah. I like to play with playing cards, card tricks, stuff like that.
Okay. Very good, very good. How you doing?
Hi, my name is Jonathan. I'm going to be a senior at Crespi next year. And I guess,
You have any hobbies?
I'm a track athlete. So,
Okay, what do you run?
I do long jump and triple jump.
Okay. All right. Very good, very good. Yes, sir.
I'm Josh here. I'm a freshman to CSUN.
Okay.
I'm
Modeling? Okay. Like my fashion model? Okay. Yes.
I'm Quincy. I'm going to be a junior at CSUN High School, and I like to play basketball.
Basketball. Okay. Yes.
I'm Brandon. I'm going to be a junior at CSUN High School, and I like to play music.
Music. Very good, very good. Yes.
I'm Mauricio. I'm a senior at John F. Kennedy High School, and I like to go on the
And you like to what?
run.
Run. Okay. So is it, do you run track as well?
I'm joining cross country.
Joining cross country. Very good. Okay.
So, my name is Julio. I just graduated my BA in Legal Studies from Northridge.
Uh-huh.
So I'm helping out from each other.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Now, interestingly enough, you all just introduced yourselves and you told me what your hobbies are, right? Now I'm going to ask you a question. How is it that you plan to realize those hobbies? You ever thought about that? What we're doing is called forecasting and planning. Well, how do you plan to turn that hobby into maybe a vocation, maybe a job, maybe something that you could do, right? Because if you work at something you love doing, you never actually work a day in your life. So where's my music guy? My music guy, right? So have you thought about what you want to do with music? Yeah? Have you thought about what you want to do with music? You want to make money with music, right?
Yeah.
So in order to make money with music, you have to be the best at your craft, right?
Yeah.
So being the best at your craft means you're gonna need some what? Additional training and development, right? Have you planned on getting that additional training and development?
Yeah.
Where you plan on going to get it?
It could be like anywhere.
It could be anywhere?
Yeah.
You can't get it from anywhere. Because if it was anywhere, it would be everywhere. So if it's not everywhere, you can't get it anywhere. So you got to get it from somewhere.
Yeah.
So you need to be more specific.
My family's been in the music business for a long time.
Families in the music business. So you're going to get your expertise and training from your family.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, do you think the outside musical entertainment community will respect the expertise that you get from your family, or you think they're going to want you to be trained formally?
I think training.
Okay, so then you might want to consider formal training, right?
Yeah.
Have you thought about that?
Not recently.
So that's something to think about, right? Because if we have goals and we don't have any concrete, abstract ways to achieve those goals, then we have pipe dreams. Right?
Yeah.
So we want to put some what? We want to be able to what? Achieve some of those goals, right? Me, if I were you, you said you're a junior, right?
Yeah.
You're a rising senior, so you ought to be considering colleges and universities, right? Someone told me Northridge has a pretty decent music department. Have you heard that?
Yes, they do.
Someone said it's actually ranked. Have you heard that?
Has been
Okay.
#1 in the nation at times.
Okay, so if in fact I went to school near a university campus that had a top 10 music program, and I wanted to go into music, somebody will get this in a minute, and I wanted to go into music, would I connect the dots at some point or some way? Would I think about Northridge? Would I consider Northridge? Would I say, you know what, can I visit Northridge and go to the music department? Can I talk to some of the professors there? Can I make them aware that I'm a local student who's interested in the program? It's the #1 program, it's a top tier program. Wouldn't that make your challenge to earn money making music a little bit easier? Because you can come here and get the expertise that's going to be required, right? Music is competitive. Like track, like sports, it's competitive. In order to compete, you have to be what? You have to be the best. So in order to be the best, you have to learn from the best. So how do you learn from the best? You have to go where the best people are. The best trainers, the best educators, the best facilitators, right? So we need to what? If we're going to have goals, dreams, aspirations, and hobbies, we need to figure out how we're going to realize them, right? That's called self-actualization. We want to figure out how we're going to realize them, right? So when I was growing up, I grew up in South Central Los Angeles, right? Commonly referred to as the hood. 42nd and Hoover. How many people are familiar with South Central Los Angeles? Anyone know what 42nd and Hoover is? Okay, right down the street from Manual Arts. 42nd and Hoover, right? So growing up in, quote unquote, the hood or an urban neighborhood, you know, you experience a number of things. You experience a number of things. You see hard-working families, you know, trying to make ends meet. And then, of course, you see the other, what, ills and or miseries of urban decay, right? You see the decayed neighborhoods and what have you. So for me, what I wanted to do, I wanted to get out of the neighborhood. I got tired of being chased by dogs. Because in the neighborhood, when I was going to school, I mean, dogs used to be walking around the streets without leashes. I mean, just dogs in the neighborhood, like Rottweilers and pit bulls. And dogs were just in the neighborhood because I don't know what happened. I guess people didn't take care of their dogs. They didn't keep the dogs. You know, dogs would be in the neighborhood, right? And dogs would sometimes chase you. You know, when you ever been chased by a big dog? You got to get your boogie on, right? Because that big dog ain't with you at home. That big dog is going to take a chunk out of you. So that right there, the first thing I wanted to do is get out of the neighborhood. So I went to high school. Anyone in here play football? Nobody? No football players in here? Play. I went to high school, played football, got a football scholarship. I went to an HBCU. Anyone know what that means?
Historically Black College.
I went to a historically black college university, right? And it was an exciting experience. I got a chance to get away from home first and foremost, right? I got a chance to get in an environment where, you know, it was an environment where, you know, pretty much everyone seemingly was supportive. Everyone, you know, happened to be a person of color. It was a very encouraging and welcoming environment. It's a nurturing environment, and it helped to develop me. It helped to develop me, right? Now, that may or may not have happened if I went to an institution like this. Anyone know what that stands for? PWI.
Predominantly white institution.
Predominantly white institution. That may or may not have happened, right? It may or may not have happened. We can't speculate. It may or may not have happened. But my experience at the HBCU is fascinating, right? I happen to play football. I played football with a guy that some of you might, anyone ever heard of a guy named Jerry Rice?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I played football with a guy named Jerry Rice. It was his senior year, and it was my freshman year, right? And he was an amazing athlete, like you all probably know. He's a Hall of Famer, amazing athlete. He would come out to practice 30 to 45 minutes before practice, and he would catch 100 balls in a row with each hand, one hand. So it's interesting to me because I'm a freshman, incoming freshman. This guy's a senior. He doesn't have to do that. But this guy's a senior. He came out every day before practice and made sure he caught 100 balls with each hand. And you know what that said to me right there? That said to me right there, this guy has an amazing work ethic. If he's a senior, he's out here doing this. So if he's out here doing this as a senior, I'm going to have to work really, really hard myself. So the first thing that demonstrates to me is that when we gain opportunities, we need to capitalize on those opportunities by being what? By putting forth what? Additional effort. Additional effort, right? Sometimes that's 100% plus. So some of you are math majors, right? Some of you are good with math, right? Some of you are right saying, well, how did you do 100% plus? I thought 100% was all you can give. How do you give 100% plus? Anyone know how to do that? How do you give 100% plus? Anybody? Somebody tell me. You all are creative, right? We got musical people here.
You put in more than you put in more than what you can.
Okay, you put in more than what you can. So that means you have to be what? Dedicated, committed. You have to have some perseverance. You have some grit, some resiliency. You guys have any of that?
I hope so.
Nobody knows? Well, dang, I need a dictionary. First of all, look at what those words mean, right?
Actually, grit is on our word of the day. Actually, we were talking about achievement, and someone said grit earlier, so it's interesting that came up.
Okay, so what does grit mean to you all? Resilience, right? Resilience, right? You have resilience? Very good, very good. We all have resilience, right? And it's at varying levels in us. We need to have that grit and resilience brought to what? Brought to the forefront, higher levels, right? So that we can what? Achieve beyond our wildest dreams, right? And it's going to require practice, right? Okay? Someone said practice makes perfect. That's not true. Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Right? Perfect practice makes perfect. Okay, so that's just a bit of an intro, and we're going to segue back to that. I'm going to let my colleague now, interject.
Yeah, forget the PowerPoint, we're going to wing it. This is what faculty members do. We just kind of wing it when something happens with the social media. You probably can figure it out, but I can't. We're kind of in between when we had the typewriter, the NSDF space. You guys don't know about that. Anyways, I'm Cedric. I've been here at this campus since 1991 as a football player, when we had a football program. I played from 91 to 93. I came in as an economics major. I bounced around and eventually became a sociology major with an Africana Studies, or back then it was called Pan-African Studies minor. And I wanted to be a vice president of student affairs. There was a person that I kind of try to model after, and I think that's an important thing, modeling, looking at role models and modeling after them, emulating what you think that made them successful. And his name was William Watkins. He's the vice president and dean of students here on campus. He was an undergraduate here as a president and associated students. Anybody part of ASB? Okay, so dang, you're just everything, huh? You're like, yes, I get involved.
This is Adrian
Very
1, though.
important. Yes, Adrian.
Adrian 1. He has to be on the point. This is Adrian 1.
And Adrian also got flow too, we discovered.
You got flow, that's good. And I'll share in a minute what I do. I'm glad we have at least one person in ASB or any type of programs that hone in skills that you normally wouldn't get in the classroom. It's really about relationships, right? It's really about developing relationships so that you can self-actualize. But there's also racial identity. And as I was going through, and I got my master's here in the College of Education college counseling and student services because I wanted to be an advisor. But I realized at an early age that I was a leader. And there's so many different skills that are transferable into what you can become. Right now, people are mulling their heads over thinking about how to train students in this day and age for jobs that don't exist right now, you know, because we're in a rapidly changing information technological world. Some of you guys will create apps that is going to help whole communities. You know, it always happens that way. I got my master's in college counseling, and I went to become an EOP advisor. But one of the things that got me to the professorate was the transferable skills. I wasn't anticipating becoming a professor, you know. But I realized that through EOP, through first-time freshmen, first-time transfer workshops, I was giving lectures, but it was called workshops, right? Talking about preparation, talking about identity. Where do you fit in this environment, right? This campus here, it used to be called San Fernando Valley State, and it was traditionally what they call lily white. Obviously, we're an HSI campus now, Hispanically Serving Institution, because we have more than 30% Latino, right? I'm from Oxnard, the Hueneme area, if you've ever heard of it. And so my dad, he married a Latina and towards the end of his third marriage. And so she used to call me Mija and everything. So I feel like I'm a part of the brown community as well. You know, I like enchiladas. In fact, you know what's funny is how many people watch soccer? All right, you know Acapulco, through Friday, if you say Viva Mexico, you get free nachos, right? Wait, seriously? Yes, yeah. Yes, seriously. Wow.
Viva Mexico.
Anyhow, just to circle back to my journey of becoming the professorate, I had these experiences of giving workshops, and then I had this mentor. I distinguished my female mentors from male mentors. I call them mentoras. Anyhow, Jackie Ward, she was an EOP. She wanted me to get into a professional organization called NASPA. And every profession has a professional organization. NASPA stands for the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, right? But obviously they've added a faculty component in there. I was going to be a vice president. I want to be William Watkins. There was these knowledge communities that they had, and one of which was called the African American Knowledge Community. I was excited about it. I was interested. There was folks that looked like me who were thinking about doing the same things, making a difference in the lives of people. Relationships are all there is. I ended up becoming the regional chair, and then at the national conference in St. Louis, they selected me as the national chair. Here I was, this academic advisor, an SSP1. You don't know what that means, but it's the lowest on the totem pole of advisors here, running a national organization with deans and vice presidents who are part of this community, you know, and they're taking their directives from me. And I'm like, what do I do? Holy S, right? Well, that's when I realized that my skills, things that I've done in the past, have set in. The leadership, organization. I remember my coach in high school used to have me be the person that did the prayer. Anybody ever see Invictus? Mm-hmm. All right, I want you to all stand up. Stand up. So I use this as a part of, the Invictus piece as a part of motivating folks to realize who they are, right? So I want you to look at each other and I want you to say, I am. I am. You got to say it with conviction. I am. I am. Somebody. Somebody. And so are you. And so are you. Make sure you point. And so are you. And so are you. Now I want you to really hone in on this one. I am the master of my fate. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. I am the captain of my soul. I am who I am. I am who I am. And that's enough. And that's enough. All right, give a fist bump. Fist bump. Fist bump. Fist bump. Now let me ask you this. How did that feel? Did that feel energizing? Yes. Do you feel like you were acknowledged? Do you feel like that, you know, as a person that's leading this part, activated your voice? You know, whether I coach, whether I play, 40 and over adult league, and all these other things, one thing rings true, it's communication. And sometimes our communication skills get stifled when somebody looks at you and calls you out, and you become the stereotype for the rest of your group. And you start to think about and have anxiety when you enter the classroom of, oh my God, am I going to be found out? Am I an imposter? Am I this? Am I that? Those are always going to seep through your mind. You just got to let it bounce in and bounce out, because you are here for a reason. There's a reason why you're in this room wearing an F2 MTC shirt thinking about what your future is going to be. Because it's not what you're going through right now. It's not what you've been through in the past. It's how you come through. And you know what? There's going to be people who look up to you in the future. There's people who look up to you now if you volunteer, right? I volunteer at the YMCA. I coach my niece's basketball team. And one thing I say to them, at 9 years old, to my other kids at 13, to my students at 18 to 25, you know what, it's really about relationships. Life is built in a series of next steps. And there's going to be people in your life that are going to give you these pivots. There's a poet named Sherman Alexie. I was at a conference in Boise, at that NASPA conference, regional. And I remember what he said. He goes, you know what, I had different ringleaders who gave me these little pivots so I could, go into the direction that I'm supposed to go in, In Africana studies, we have an African worldview, and one of the things that we deal with, everything we do has a purpose. It's not just learning for learning's sake, right? It's really about purpose. What are you here for? What's your purpose? Who's going to tell your story when you're gone? Think about this, 70,000 days. It's about an average of 70 years in a lifespan, right? So I got about 18,000. I mean, if I stop my Herbalife, because I'm on Herbalife, that's why I was sweating so much, shakes and all these things that they have to be doing. After 40, metabolism slows down. So I have to tell you, continue your workout, right? Metabolism is fast. Okay, so back to my story of how I became a professor. All these skills, being scared, being uncomfortable. When you're scared and uncomfortable, it stretches you. That's when learning happens, right? If you're comfortable, you're going to stay stagnant. You got to stretch and take a risk, right? And taking risks meaning trying new things. You're in an environment where we're here to give you this information, but what's the takeaway? Think about how you situate yourself in the information that's being presented to you. This is what these mentors and mentoras have told me, and I learned from everybody. Anyhow, so I couldn't get the PowerPoint done. After I finished my bout at NASPA as a national chair, I was working in EOP. I was working in Pan-African Studies as an EOP advisor, and the chair at the time, there was a faculty member who taken ill. She knew I was going through my doctorate in educational leadership. I wasn't thinking about becoming a professor, but she asked me if I would sub in for a writing class, a developmental writing class. They call it remedial. They're taking that out now. Anyhow, so I got excited about it and looked at the syllabus. I didn't agree with the way the syllabus was written, so I reread it. I was like, why not? I bought a lecture book. I was like all excited, gung-ho, and I started to look at my own self-learning. It's really not about just taking information from somebody else. It's actually you going to get it, finding the tools to help honing your skills. And so that's what I did, and I treated the syllabus. It was the bomb, and I was there for 5 weeks, and then the professor came back. And then a position presented itself, and the chair asked me to apply. She said, you would be good. And I was really good at quantitative methodology, statistics. And they needed a methodologist. So I was like, okay. So I applied, I got the position. It was a 3-step process. You had to do a sample lecture, meet with the faculty members who I know because I was an EOP advisor for them already, and the dean, who's our provost now. And I got the position and went to faculty affairs. and they rejected it because I have an educational doctorate and not a PhD. And so at the same time, that same week, I was going for a job at the College of the Canyons as a counselor. So I was like, what am I going to do? I thought I was going to get this teaching position. So the dean, she changed the job description and put doctoral degree. And I went through the process again, the whole process, except for the fact that the dean, when I met with her, she's like, do you want the job? I said, yes. She's like, you can have it. I said, thank you. I said, can I have a hug? And she was not really a hugger. Remember, in faculty affairs is different from student affairs. It's touchy-feely in student affairs, you know. You got career services, you got associated students, you got the university student union, you got outreach and recruitment, all this touchy-feely stuff. But you guys go on retreats and do things and process at the end, you know, what you've learned and all that. Faculty, we're these little entrepreneurs and we're studying. Everything becomes data. Anything that is data, right? And I said, can I have a hug? She's like, don't tell anybody. So, and I became this faculty member. And the interesting thing, in my third year, we were looking for a chair, because we were out with a chair. And the dean knew I had leadership skills. And so for that year, while we were doing a search for the chair, she asked me to become the assistant chair. I'm like, what? I'm in the tenure, I'm in a vulnerable position. I took a risk and said, yeah, why not? Needless to say, it was 12-hour nights and trying to figure it out, and then also looking at your peers, folks who are ahead of you, folks who are at the same level, and folks who are coming in after you, in terms of how they felt about me and who I was and why I got this opportunity. You can't allow that to discourage you. You just got to keep moving, and then look at what's the best benefit for everybody. You know, there's in life a lot of people are not going to like you, you know, in terms of your leadership style, whatever, but they will respect you if you stay consistent. It's almost like playing 3-card. You know, my wife's going to Vegas tomorrow. I'm not going. Anyways, it's like playing 3-card. You don't know this because you guys are not 21 yet, but 3-card. There's this one thing at the very top, and you know, it's for this. It's a sucker bet, but I played that consistently. Some person that wasn't playing consistently, he ended up getting a whole straight flush. He would have made $10,000, but he wasn't consistent on that. So I use that as a metaphor to stay consistent. I know gambling, that probably is not a good story, but at the same time, you know, sometimes life is a gamble in terms of what you decide to do. I've heard stories of faculty members that just kind of quit and became their own entrepreneur, became academic consultants, and they're having a lucrative life. You know, some people are not, you know, afraid to take that risk. It really just depends on you, right? So anyways, that's how I became a professor, and then all of a sudden, the chair, and then during that, actually they couldn't call me the chair, they called me the AOD, Administrator on Duty, because I wasn't tenured. And so anyhow, once I got tenured last August, I started growing my second batch of dreads. I was like, you know, they can't get rid of me. And I am also a hip-hop artist. I use hip-hop as a proxy for racial uplift, self-determination. I'm actually working on a hip-hop pedagogy framework called ethnoflownology, and uses the 4 principles of hip-hop culture. Keeping it real, right? Flipping the script, making some noise, right? And staying fresh, you know, with the lingo. So I sometimes in my classroom I'll say dope, I'll say woke. You know, I got the chili pepper, I'll rate my professor if you looked at it. I was like, oh, and there's like, he's woke, he uses all these words that we use in every day. Well, I have a 25-year-old, a 24-year-old, and a 17-year-old, so they help me out. I'm stay fresh. So that's a little bit about me and how I became a professor. I run the Du Bois-Hamer Institute for Academic Achievement. I'm going to pass these out. These are brochures that kind of tell you about the signature programs. What Dr. Collier, I forgot your hyphen name now, but Dr. Collier, what she was alluding to in terms of some of our signature programs, every semester for my black male class, yes, I teach a black male class in contemporary times. It's like this, it's a no-brainer, right? Using frameworks to, you know, help us not become reactionary, but to be more proactive in things that we're concerned with, see out there. So I have this biannual Men of Color, Inquiry, and Student Research poster session that happens every semester, in which my students, I take them on a journey, scaffolding journey, build it up until they develop this sense of research self-efficacy, right? A belief in my research skills and abilities, right? And of course, we'll have a keynote, and then we have performances. In African studies, we like to use the aesthetic, whether it's poetry, whether it's dance, whether it's spoken word, whatever it is, right? That deals with athletics, those kind of things. And then every year we have what we call a Black Youth Guidance Forum. And the Black Youth Guidance Forum is an important thing because we have a kind of a 4-strand model where we invite the K through 12. K through 5 has a leadership a track. 6 through 12 have a track. I'm telling you because I expect that every one of you guys are going to be here at this event. It's March 30th of next year, so mark your calendars on Saturday. It's free in the Union, and believe me, my programs are shock and awe, right? Anyhow, and then we always have these community engagement activities and have a K through 12 partnership. And so I work in conjunction with this nonprofit organization called Fluker is the executive director, called Village Nation. It was at Cleveland High School, and they have it over at El Camino now High School. And what they do a series of things like retreats and workshops, in-services that really talk about racial identity development and things of that nature. You have to be able to know thyself so you can function, kind of fit for a form to function with the rest of your environment, right? So it's really, I have a new term for you, academic milieu. Let me hear you say that, academic milieu. Academic milieu. It's just academic environment, another word for environment. It's fancy terms. One of my mentors just told me, you need to get a thesaurus, so when a professor's talking and use a word that you're not used to, look that up, look at the synonym, that you use in your common language, and then you try to reverse it and use it in your everyday language for a week. All of a sudden it becomes a part of who you are in building your literacy, right? You gotta be able to play the game a little bit, and it is a game, I tell you. Okay, so this just kind of gives you kind of what we do. And then I think I'll turn it over now to my colleague, Dr. Ricks, who will talk about minority male mentoring.
Thank you. So, so we have several colleagues and I, we decided that after having seen student achievement, we decided we wanted to do something to help to promote and or boost student achievement, right? Because we ultimately want to see our students succeed. So we noticed that in our classes, and we noticed that there was something that was alarming to us. We started to see a decrease in the number of minority male students. So the typical scenario was we will see minority male students the freshman year, right? First year, right? We wouldn't see them that second semester. We wouldn't see them the second semester. So it appeared that we were having pretty reliably, we had some pretty reliable data that suggested that for some reason or other, male students, particularly minority male students, aren't returning to campus, either after the first semester, first year, whatever, right? And so we started to wrestle with some of the reasons we thought that would be, right? Some students decided to go work and help their families. Some students decided that, CSUN was not the right place for them, so they transferred to community colleges. And some we couldn't get any data on because there weren't any exit interviews, right? So my colleagues and I wrote a proposal to create a program to assist in the academic development of students, right? So that's how we came about with minority male mentorship. And so what we do is we assist with the development of minority students, male students, and that assistance includes coaching, mentorship, It includes academic advisement. It includes focus groups, workshops. It includes a basketball camp, and et cetera, right? So those are some of the things we do. And minority male achievement is important for me because, you know, like I mentioned to you, I grew up in a predominantly black and brown community in South Central Los Angeles, right? I went to an HBCU. I was encouraged, I was mentored, I was coached, I was developed by primarily minority faculty members. So I was ready to go to graduate school. I loved school so much I ended up getting 2 master's degrees before I got my PhD, right? The interesting thing happened to me along this academic journey. One of my professors was quite encouraging. And she encouraged me to pursue a doctoral program after I got my first master's. I got a master's in public administration. She encouraged me to go into a doctoral program. So then I went to ask another professor, you know, what did he think about that, right? The professor that encouraged me happened to be a white woman. The professor whom I went to get confirmation happened to be a white male. And he was like, well, I thought you wanted to go into, you know, law enforcement. And he was like, I think that's probably a better career path. So after having gone to one professor and got this encouragement, you know, I was on a high and ready to go. I just needed to have the final validation. So I'm not going to mention their names. But at any rate, I went to this other professor and it was kind of like, you know, dang, you should try something else. So that kind of had me kind of baffled, right? Because there was one professor who was encouraging, another professor that was less than encouraging. So what do you think I did? Do you think I followed the path of the less discouraging professor or the path of the more encouraging professor? That's what I decided to do. I decided to, I said, screw so-and-so. I know what the hell he's talking about. I'm going to do this anyway. And when I do it, I'm going to come back here and show him. Boy, did I get into it. Be careful when you jump into the pool, particularly the deep end of the pool. Make sure you can swim. So I jumped into the deep end of the pool, right? I went into a doctoral program I may not have been adequately prepared for. But of course, like you all just mentioned earlier, that grit, that persistence, that resilience, I was like, oh no, I'm not going to be defeated, right? And so what I was doing, I was around students who were well-groomed, who knew what they wanted to do. I jumped into this program, and lo and behold, it was sink or swim. And then I decided, not only was I going to get into a program, I decided I was going to get into a top program. So I came back home from Mississippi after having got a bachelor's and a master's degree and came to USC. So I was, got accepted, got a doctoral fellowship into the political science department at USC. It was a doctoral fellowship for public administration and political science. So I was like, right there, right? And it's funny, my colleague mentioned imposter complex, and I kind of had, a less than severe case of imposter complex. It wasn't severe, it was less than severe. I was walking around that campus and I was like, these students, when we introduce ourselves and we say what school we went to, what schools they came from, these students came from Ivy League schools, Big 10 schools, Big 12 schools, and I would say Mississippi Valley State University, the small HBCU, right? And they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that school. And at that time, you would have to say Jerry Rice's name in order to make anybody actually remember the school, because the school is about 4,500 students total. Your high schools are bigger than this school, right? Mm-hmm. But it was a place that bore me, it was a place that nurtured me, it was a place that developed me. It was a place where I developed my sense of pride, sense of self, and identity, as Professor Hackett mentioned. It was a place that allowed me to know that any place I go, I can succeed. Why? Because I was taught there, anything the mind can conceive, the body can achieve, no matter what others perceive, as long as you believe. And that's what I took away with me, right? So coming back to USC, and then I graduate from USC. I get a PhD in political science. Somebody tell me, did you guys know what political science is? So I guess in high school it's probably called American government. You guys anybody taking AP government? No AP government? Government, right? Just trying to get out of there, right? Don't know what the hell's going on, right? Just government, right? Does anybody know what government is? Anybody know, what is it?
It's the leadership of
Leadership, Constitution. Is Constitution important? Makes a little sense, right? You know, civil society, things we should do, how we should govern ourselves. You know, those kind of topics and subject matter became important to me, right? Because as I looked around and as I grew up, you know, you know, you all probably remember, well, you probably don't remember, but you know, there was Watts riots, 1965. Then there was the civil unrest in Los Angeles in 1992, Rodney King. You know, there was all these bouts of civil unrest, and it became interesting to me, and it became a research question. It became puzzling to me, you know, why so much civil unrest? So I did some research on civil unrest, right? And as a result of the civil unrest was primarily, you know, it was primarily initiated and or started as a result of racial conflict. Racial conflict or disagreements around race relations, right? And that was really, really kind of what actually formed me into wanting to become a political scientist, right? So I wanted to look at, you know, why do we have these conflicts, you know? Why do we have these problems? And when we have these problems, you know, why do people resort to violence and things of that sort? So, you know, that's one of the research areas I look at. You know, I look at racial politics in the context of political science. And right now I'm working on two projects. I'm looking at political leadership in the state of California, comparing Latino elected officials and black elected officials in their leadership styles, right? We're talking about groups that may or may not have the same leadership style as the majority. Because if we go to Congress, we'll look at Congress. Congress does not look like this classroom. Congress is not representative. It's what we call male, pale, and stale. Male, pale, and stale. White males, no women, male, pale, and stale. That's what Congress looks like, right? It doesn't look like this classroom. It's not representative of this classroom, right? So I was taught, or I thought that democracy is supposed to be representative, right? So that meant that, you know, people of color and women should have a place at the table or a seat at the table, right? So that wasn't the case. So that became an interesting question to me, right? So whenever I go any place, I'm always looking at the descriptive representation. I scan the room, look around the room, I see who's in the room. And when I know who's in the room and who's not in the room, that's when I begin to know what my role is. I know who's in the room and who's not in the room. That's when I begin to know my role. So with that, I want to ask you a question, right? You all kind of know one another? You guys kind of know one another, right? Really? You do? You really do?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm going to ask you all, if you all could stand up and move over to that side of the classroom. Because you all know one another, right? So this is going to be easy for you if you all know one another, right?
They know each other, some really well, but some they've met over the course of the week. So
Okay, so you all been here a week.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you guys know
Almost a week. We've been here almost
a
a
week,
week.
right? So I want you to go on that side, of the room. Okay. So this is what we're going to call a non-verbal communication exercise, right? We're going to see how well you all communicate non-verbally, right? Which means that you cannot talk, right? So I want you all to line up from north to south in ascending order by way of birth date, month and day. Ascending order by way of birth date. I want you to begin right now. From this point, no talking. This will be the beginning, and this will be the end.
Meaning January at the top.
Let's see how long this takes. Okay. Okay. Are we good? We good? We good? Okay, birthday.
1-1.
118. 2002.
You remember it?
329.
Okay, very good. You gotta remember the birthday now, that's important. Okay?
Oh, Cisco did
June
not.
21st.
Really? April 25th?
Oh.
April 25th, are you in the right spot?
What was
Okay,
Quincy's?
okay.
Quincy, when was yours?
118.
Okay. So,
8-4.
No, September 20th.
September 21st.
October 3rd.
okay, so you all need to, you all need to make a move to get in the correct order. So get in the correct order.
I'm in the right spot.
Oh.
Okay. So now tell me, what did you all think about that silent exercise? First, what's important about learning nonverbal communication?
It's not as efficient.
Pardon?
It's not as efficient.
Not as efficient. Well, what's important is following what? Instructions. So in order to be successful in college, the first thing you have to do is what? You have to always listen to what's going on around you. You have to listen to the instructions, right? Because when we listen to the instructions, we know what we have to do. Then after we listen to the instructions, what do? We put a plan in place. You all started acting, right? Put a plan in place, right? You did it pretty good. You did pretty good. We're in order, right? So now you all know birthdays, right? So what else did you learn from this non-verbal communicating exercise, right? You learned that you really didn't know one another as you thought you did, right? You didn't know one another's birthdays, right? So now you know birthdays, right?
How did it feel to be muted? That you had to just not use verbal language?
Kind of frustrating,
Frustrating? Why? How so?
because what if like they have the same month but they didn't know the day? And sometimes when you're using your hand, it's kind of hard to like express it, like say it.
So if the day is beyond a 10, it's tough because you only got 10 fingers, right? So if you're born on a day beyond 10, it's kind of, you gotta
Yeah, you gotta flash it.
you gotta flash it, right?
So how did you guys improvise?
Hand signals.
Okay. And so how did you come up with ordering it through hand signals?
I mean, I guess, I don't know if I was like the very first one that initiated it, but I
Oh, so you initiated it.
You know, that's Adrian 1.
Adrian 1 showed some leadership.
Show us some leadership, Adrian 1.
I just put up my birth month and fingers. So,
And how did they know that it was your birth month?
because that's kind of like the basis. So like the first thing that everyone would think of is their birth month, and then the day comes out.
Okay.
So what skills were you were you developing or were you practicing?
Initiative, taking initiative.
Initiative? What else?
Critical thinking.
Yeah.
Anybody else? What else?
Team
Huh?
building.
Team building, okay.
Communication.
Communication, nonverbal.
Now, what if I were to tell you all to do that by the first letter of your middle name? Can you all do it?
Let's see if they can do it.
Okay, let's see if we can
See if we can do it.
Now let's get in order. Ascending, A, Z, first letter of your middle name. And from this point, no talking. First letter of your middle name.
Wait, do you know sign language?
First letter of middle name. We don't use that middle name very often, right?
Middle. The middle.
First and last name would just be too easy.
I'm glad you said that because they have name tags.
Right. Okay, we good? We good? Okay, what's your middle name?
Alexis.
Okay,
Antonio.
A. Antonio, A.
Cesar.
Cesar, C.
Kareem.
Kareem, K. Kareem with K?
Joseph.
Okay.
Lewis.
But wait, you said Joseph?
Yeah.
You should be in front of Kareem there, right?
He just took an L. No, just
Okay now. Let me see what we got here. Louis, L,
Michael.
Michael,
Montiel.
Monty, okay.
Oluwashua.
O,
Oh,
okay.
Could you pronounce that, your name again?
Oluwashua.
Oluwashula. Oh, I like that.
Okay. Very good. Now, what was different from the second exercise than the first? The first one you did it by birthday. The second one you did it by middle name. What was different?
You don't have to.
Or was there a difference?
You don't have to hold like fingers out for numbers. You could just do, I guess, try to do your letter. So if you have an A, it's like that.
Okay. So there's some easy letters, right?
Yeah, but some difficult letters probably.
Right.
Arose.
Yeah. 'Cause how do you do the B's?
I don't know.
That would mess me up.
I don't got a B.
So good thing you guys are having B's, huh?
Well, if you're a gang member,
Okay. I guess you can do a lowercase b, right?
Lowercase b.
Wait a minute. Yeah. Okay. So we learned something, and then guess what? Verbal communication is important, but guess what? Non-verbal communication is important as well, right? So your behaviors, your symbols, your folkways and mores are all taken into account, right? Your body language. Do you know from your body language you can tell a professor whether or not you're participating or you've checked out? Just by body language alone, right?
here's one example. Or the other example.
So body language tells whether you're invested or not, right? Whether you're participating or not, whether you're engaged or not, right? And guess what all of the data shows us? The students that are engaged are the students who do well in the coursework, are the students that will typically are going to be the students who are going to do well, score high, and actually successfully matriculate, right? So something to think about, right? Okay? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues.
All right, so we're going to go outside and we're going to do another nonverbal game, so follow me. What I'd like you to do is formulate teams of 3 and then one team of 4. So do that now. The exercise is called Crossing the Molten Lava. You see there's 5 paces across and 5 horizontal, okay? And here's the directions. There was an earthquake and all of a sudden lava, a volcano erupted. And you're all stuck in a building. So what you have to do is there's only one path to safety. Everyone wants to follow that path. And so in teams, what you're going to do non-verbally is try to cross the lava. If you hear,
the last time I checked, the Constitution said, of the people, by the people, and for the people.
any statement from Clinton that means you're out, and then the next group will go, and then you'll continue until somebody is the winner. There is a straight path that I have, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to monitor that. What you have to do as a team is non-verbally figure out how you get across to safety. Does that make sense? If you're confused, raise your hand.
Instructions are important.
Okay, so what are you confused on?
So Bill says no?
No, Bill, if I press Bill, that means, you hear his voice, that means that you fell into the lava and you got to start over your group, okay? Now, what were you confused?
You have to get to the other side.
You got to get to the other side, but there's a clear pathway. You can go up and down, backwards, forwards, you can go across, you can go diagonal. This is the game, okay? So right now, you have 3 minutes to verbally discuss with your team what the strategy can be. Ready? Go.
I did not have sex.
No, that's good. Do it something different. Bring it in.
No one wants to get this matter behind us more than I do. Maybe all the rest of America.
1 minute, 1 minute.
What was that, Rodolfo?
I did not have sex with that woman. His favorite comment.
And an idea. That's the frontiers. It stretches as far as
how big is that room?
If that person gets out of the next one.
15 seconds.
So you have to remember the path that they
Oh, the
take.
patty.
You just have to remember.
14,
Right. So you gotta-
13, 12, 11, 10, 9,
No, you just.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So one person out of one group will go first. And
All right, Big O.
okay, so
So you, Big O.
give me the groups. Where are your groups at? Raise your hand if you. Okay, so this is a group right
So
here.
you man.
You're a group right here, and you're a group right there. Okay, so only one person in each group will go, and you guys will take turns. But you guys got to think about this. Okay, ready? Go ahead.
Question. So one person in the group is gonna go, but
Yes, the other folks are going to observe.
Oh, okay.
Exactly, and then you guys will take turns. Okay? All right. I left these instructions ambiguous purposely. Okay, ready? Go ahead.
I can spend your money better than you can.
Okay.
So remember now, that's not a good step, right? Remember where you just stepped.
and we could only take one step at a like
Yes.
one. Oh, okay.
It depends on what the meaning of the word I'm just trying to suppress my natural impulses and get back to
You can go.
Somebody who has a gun.
I guess I got. I got forgot.
You know, if I were a single man, I might ask that mummy out. That's a good-looking mummy.
Who's paying attention?
Almost makes you want to go to jail out here. I've said I've never broken the drug laws of my country, and that is the absolute truth. Sure, if I could. I tried before.
I think I know that one.
I did not.
Hey, skip one, man. Come on, Lo.
Miss Lewinsky.
You thinking you long jumping? Huh?
I did not inhale.
If you guys don't know that one by now, I mean,
Real quick, a caveat, you can go side by side, or you can go back and forth, or diagonal.
where should I go?
No talking, no talking.
Talk? That lava's hot, dude.
You can't say you love your country and hate your government.
That lava's hot.
If a community were usually referred to as the West, is an idea. It has no fixed frontiers.
Come on,
It
come on, come
stretches
on.
as far as the frontiers of freedom can go.
Quincy didn't get to go yet.
You can't say you love your country and hate your government.
Who's next? Who has it going? Who has it going?
Let's see.
You paying attention now?
The other thing we have to do is to take seriously the role in this problem of older men who play on underage women. And tyranny, we must remember, begins with the destruction of the truth.
It's like memory too.
Exactly, yes.
You know, the one thing that's wrong with this country, everyone gets a chance to have their fair say.
All right, Conley now.
The last time I checked, the Constitution said, of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's what the Declaration of Independence said. If a community we usually refer to as the West is an idea, it has no fixed frontiers. It stretches as far as the frontiers of freedom can go. No one wants to get this matter behind us more than I do, except maybe all the rest of the American people. I can spend your money better than you can.
Come on. Adrian, what are you looking
It
for?
depends on what the meaning of the word is.
Oh, yeah. Wait, it's Adrian's turn.
You did not do that.
I'm just trying to suppress my natural air pulses and get back to work.
Back to the beginning already?
You said you moved ahead?
You know, if I were a Superman, I would have that mummy out. That's a good-looking mummy.
You didn't get it. No, I pressed, yeah, just.
Are you serious, Cedric? Come on now. You can't do that.
That's
Yeah, I
fake
was trying to
news.
press the button this way.
That's fake news and it go off.
Oh my gosh.
Wait a second.
Okay.
I've never...
All right, this is the winner right here. Okay, let's go back to the process. All right. Here's the interesting thing. What learning outcomes do you think that we were trying to address here? Trial and error?
In order to move forward, you gotta look back.
In order to, and there's a term out there in Africa, in Africana terms, it's called Sankofa. Let me hear you say that, Sankofa.
Sankofa.
That means to go back and fetch, you know, so that you, if you're looking at generational consciousness, you always want to look at what your forefathers have done, make sure that you don't repeat any mistakes, but you move forward that way. What other learning outcomes? Remembering, right? Memorization. But you didn't just have to remember on your own, right? You had your teammates with you, right? What else? Patterns, exactly. In life, there are patterns. If you know an instructor's pattern, you could be very successful. Some students, what I used to tell students, go into the faculty member or teacher's office hours. This is when they're at their most vulnerable moment to tell you anything. They like to talk. And you want to go through, if you have a problem with an assignment or something, you go in there to get to know the professor. One of the things I used to tell students here is that the best way to get to know the professor right away when you first enter a campus is going to the catalog. Because in the back of the index, it has the professor name, where they got their degrees, all these things, and that becomes a conversation piece, you know. Again, it's institutional fit, but also a sense of belonging, and those little tidbits will help you in that sense of belonging in that classroom, right? What else? What were you dealing with? Oh, go ahead.
Learn from your mistakes.
Learning from your mistakes, right? How many mistakes did we make?
A lot.
And what do we do? We continue. We continue to move on. So if you fail a test, you know, this is the one thing that I always try to tell my students. This is not a community college. Community colleges are non-selective, right? Anybody can go as long as you're 18. If you get into a university or a college, you were selected in there. So you belong there. Sometimes you might have a bad experience in the classroom where you don't do well on a quiz or test and you check out. Sometimes you have to figure out what the pattern is and working with other students in that class to be able to figure it out. Because you figure out your own problems, you just have to talk to people and also do some critical thinking as well. But how many of you were frustrated? It was fun, but it was frustrating sometimes. Why was it frustrating for you?
When we would try to like predict a pathway and try to tell it amongst each other, you know, with our hands and stuff, we can talk to each other. And also when we failed, when we thought we knew it.
Okay. You had your hand raised. Why was it frustrating for you?
Well, it was just that like at one point, like we tried like a bunch. We couldn't get past like a particular spot. Like when we were halfway there, we kept trying different things, but like it kept not working.
So you reach what in counseling terms an impasse, right? You reach an impasse. You're stuck. What do? Well, you have to figure it out, right? You got out of your own home, right? And you learn from others as well, right? Okay, you talked about prediction. That was interesting of a term that you chose, prediction, because there's folks who are going to predict what your journey is going to be. But you have to be able to set the path. It's called goal setting. And then you have to be consistent, back to that gambling metaphor, and then go through it. And if you fail once, you got to get back up. You know, I always liken it to, Rocky Marciano. I don't know how many times he got hit in one fight and he was still standing. You know, or how many times Rocky Balboa and Rocky fell and got back up. Right? You got to continue to fight, especially if those who don't believe in you. The first thing you have to do is believe in your own self-concept. And you have to negotiate that self-concept in the classroom with other folks who are trying to understand their identity, right? It's called identity salience, right? Understanding what my concept is and how it fits in this classroom. Because it's not going to fit the same way in every classroom. Thus, you cannot have a cookie-cutter approach. You got to do everything individually in each classroom to get whatever experience you're supposed to get out of that, if you're living your purpose. What else? Did you understand anything about yourself in this exercise? What did you understand about yourself?
You got to observe the competition, I guess.
Okay, observe the competition. I mean, obviously we're in a capitalistic society, so it's really, there's this license plate that always, comes to my head. The man with the most toys win. It's a competition, this is the democracy that we live in, right? But remember, it's all trial and error, who's going to be the next person, leader, right? I always tell my students, if we didn't have the second Bush, we wouldn't have Obama. If we didn't have Obama, we wouldn't have our current president. If we don't have our current president, who's going to be the next one, right? That kind of thing. Whose strategy did you follow in your group, and why did you choose to follow that strategy?
Well, they chose to follow mine. I'm guessing it's since I got the first two down. Mm-hmm. They're thinking that it's better to trust me than to leading them to the path.
Oh wow, that's an interesting statement.
But you know what I noticed? I noticed it took a while for you all to get creative and start challenging the notion that he said you could go side to side, right, and or backwards. But it took a while before people began to try that. Why was that? Why did it take so long for that, you think?
Because we couldn't go forward. It was like,
But yeah, so the natural thing would have been to go side to side, but it took a while for people to go to side, right?
So sometimes in life, in a project, you have to reach consensus, and sometimes it takes longer than usual. It depends on the folks that are in your group. And I can tell you right now, if you've ever been in a group, the more education you get, the more group work you have, right? And you have to be able to understand who your group member is, whatever happens in their lives. This happens to me or to groups all the time in my classroom because they have to do group poster walk sessions. And some people are a little more vocal, some people are a little more passive. You have to be able to make it all work. And as a faculty member, I try to challenge folks to have their equal share, but realizing that different individuals have different strengths, and you want to hone in on those strengths, and that's what you guys did. This guy, he got creative. Everybody's like rooting for you. They were rooting for you, you know? And you're like, wait a minute. And they got frustrating because you thought that, you know, you won. And I said, no, wait, I didn't press the button.
I think he was the first person that got, it was 5 levels, right? He got to the 4th level and I almost made it and crunked out the 5th level.
How does it feel when somebody took that win away?
I got cheese.
Huh? You got what?
I got cheese.
You got cheese, you got cheese, you got those. Think about this, sometimes that's gonna happen in life. But did you let that set you back? No, you just continued. You did make an argument, but you didn't have a good argument and justification as to why. Sometimes you gotta negotiate grades, right? Sometimes professors will grade on a curve. Sometimes they have discretionary points. You communicating who you are and what you know and how they can help you could help with that discretionary as well. You know, life it's not just black and white. It's not binary. There's gray areas all the time, especially in college and your training. Because right now you are in training, and it's a constant training. You know, as faculty members, we have these in-services things because we have to constantly be up in our game for the new set of information that comes. Everything's about policy and how do we react to policy, you know. Everybody has policies, whether it's in politics, whether it's in education, you know. That's why we have mission statements. Do you know what your mission statement is at your school? Do you know what your mission statement is in this bridge program or learning outcomes? Have you actually looked at that? That will be winning half the battle. If you understand why it is that somebody's doing what they're doing in a program, it helps you understand and formulate the path, right? And then you can predict the path. I love that word. Okay, so last question. How much time did your team spend planning your strategy versus actually attempting to just complete the goal?
I mean, for us, Adrian kind of just went with like whatever came up, I guess, because we haven't tested it before. We just kind of went with our instinct, I guess. And at that point, it was still blind trust, and we had to go with that because no one else was coming up with anything. So it's like it really is the person that takes initiative, like, is at the head of the ship. So, yeah.
Oh, wow, I love that. Blind trust. Sometimes you're going to have to trust folks, right? Sometimes you have to trust yourself, that if you make a mistake, you know, it's just a mistake, and you move on, right? Do you want to add anything, Coach? Now, one of the things I did want to do, remember I told you I created this hip-hop pedagogy called ethnophonology. Well, I actually did a song on it called ethnophonology, because hip-hop to me, some of the old hip-hop heads told me hip-hop is an acronym for higher inner power healing our people. But obviously, there's different variations of hip-hop. How many listen to gangster hip-hop? How many listen to conscious hip-hop? How many listen to old school hip-hop? You know what I mean? There's different variations, and it makes us feel some type of way. So I use the hip-hop principles to develop what Baxter McGolda calls self-authorship. How can you be self-resilient and have self-authorship, creating as you go, right? How are you going to use that throughput to develop this sense of resistance towards social injustice, or developing service towards something. I'm telling you, sometimes you're gonna do things because it makes you feel good. They call it intrinsic rewards, right? And so my intrinsic reward, when I volunteer coach, is seeing somebody come from the beginning of not being able to dribble or not being able to throw a ball to being able to do that and utilizing those skills and doing it repetitiously and doing it together, because relationships are all there is and life is built on a series of next steps. So I'm going to play this ethnophilology and see if you remember, if you can hear the principles in there. Keeping it real, right? Being true to yourself, right? Flipping the script on somebody. If somebody says, like for example, the N-word. I talk about the N-word all the time in my male class. And I always pose the question, how many people have used the N-word? I'm not saying it for you guys. And then I ask the follow-up question, how many use it as a term? Do you think it's used as a term of endearment or it's derogatory? And then we go off into this thing, right? And so tell me if you think about the principles. Flipping the script, and when they flipped the script, I was using that N-word as an example for how they reappropriated the N-word, from its original use, in terms of its degradation towards people. Then, of course, making some noise, telling people who you are, and being able to articulate yourself, right? Using frameworks and understanding what that means for you. And then staying fresh, right? So here it goes. No flow knowledge.
You might have to just freestyle.
Yeah.
That's what we want. We want that freestyle.
I'm a writer. This is my ethnophilology. Ain't no apology. I'm into ecology. Sense of belonging. I sense that you often spit these principles. My split when I enter the classroom. Good riches, I spit so massive. And that last line that you asking, why does he spit with passion? I'm not into the passive. Turn this itch to action. Turn this itch to action. The script is making some noise on the day. Turning them doors to me. Keeping it real and staying fresh on down. Poison and no poison. Never best the script to the epic uplift. Ethnic uptick. Resistant to the social injustice on off the cuff. No trust us, it's just us. See brothers in handcuffs. Wake up. Wake up. Commit yourself to awareness. Hip hop ain't dead. Why in the power in our beer, so I start rolling dreads. See me from a mile away, so I put it in the style to say you're right, it's written, elevate. If you don't hate, I feel with the haterade. Dripping sauce. Shameless plug, I do have an album I'm explaining. So anyways, I think that's about all the time that we have. Did you want to close it up? And
I think if you all can tell me, you are here because this program is a program to inspire you to become what? Inspire you to become teachers, right? So hopefully you have gained something today that will give you a clearer path, right? A tangible vision that becoming a teacher can be a reality, right? You can be a music teacher. You can go to school and you can learn the music that you want to practice, and you can be a music teacher and a performer. You can do both, right? You can teach music to other people, and then also you can what? You can produce music, you can make music, you can do it on the commercial side, so you can be a performer and an educator. Would that be cool? That'd be sweet, right? Because you'll be able to teach people to, you'll be able to create the next generation of what? Of musicians, right? So that, and each of you who told us what your hobby is could do something similar, right? So remember that quote I said, anything the mind can conceive, the body can achieve, no matter what others perceive, as long as you believe. The key is believing in yourself, right? So I believe in you, and I want to see each and every one of you, before you leave here today, get some information from someone who can help you go where you need to go, right? Because you can't come into a situation right here where you have all this collective knowledge in here, and you let this collective knowledge get away without getting a card, a contact, an email, or something, right? Because you never know. Okay? So remember that.
I was just going to say, Boris, can you put the information for the M3 program somewhere so they can follow up with you as well?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I did want to mention that in Africana Studies, we have a program called the Social Science Subject Matter Program. How many of you are interested in becoming a CSUN? Okay, good, because that program, it's a 45-unit program. It takes the replace of your major, and 24 of those 45 units can be taken in Africana Studies. What it does after completing that program, it's in conjunction with history, it waives the CSET, right? So all you have, you waive with the CSET, and then you go into that. Okay, so if you're interested in that, contact me. I pass some cards around.
If you guys don't know what the CSET is, it's this gnarly ass test that you have to take in order to qualify for the credential program. Yes.
You gotta take a whole lot of tests, trust me.
So you want to get out of that test if you possibly can. So it's a good way to do it.
Guys,
It's great.
can we all make sure that we give Boris, Riggs, and Cedric a big round of
That's my nephew,
So my final note for today, here's our recap. So if you need to know what we talked about today, that's what we talked about today. Right? That's our recap. We both came here and mentioned to you all that we were student athletes. So that means what? That means that you should not be discouraged from playing sports. Sports can be what? Developmental. It can be a way to help you get to college, and not only get you to college, but get you through college too, because the scholarship pays for college. Right? So utilize that talent, develop that talent, and use that talent to what? To also educate yourself, right? So student athletes, we talked about mentorship and modeling yourself after someone who is a role model or what have you. Develop skills, as many skills as you can, right? Identity development, leadership, EOP, educational opportunity programs. This and other college prep programs are great for you all. Get involved in those types of programs, okay? And then, of course, you're forming learning communities, right? You know, find a study buddy or someone whom you can learn with, and that's really what we did, along with some other interactions, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, my son just graduated from mechanical engineering last year, and in his, thank you, sir, thank you. And, well, he knew when he was a freshman. And the interesting thing, he was struggling in engineering because it's a STEM field where you don't see a lot of folks that look like him in there. So what he did is he started joining different clubs. You know, they have a club for engineering, NESB. Yeah. So he went to a conference and he gained relationships that way, you know, with students that are from other schools. And that's how you get connected. And then all of a sudden, you know, you visit their school, they visit your school. I mean, you know, they have exchange programs where you can spend a semester at another campus, or international program where you can spend a year in another country. There's so many opportunities for students to develop this person that you're going to be becoming, right?
So in other words, college is too fun not to go.
Exactly.
You have too much fun in college. It's too fun not to go, right?
and so, guys, just so again, let's give them one more round of applause.